Carnell Tate has decided where he's going to play college football, and we're going to talk all about it right here on Locked on Buckeyes.
You are Locked on Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked on Buckeyes for the Locked on Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Monday, June 20th in the year 2022, and today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. I would also like to thank you for making Locked on Buckeyes your first listen or first watch of every single day. On today's episode, we will discuss a couple receivers that might commit to Ohio State very, very soon. We'll also discuss what Brian Hartline has done over the past few years recruiting wide receivers to the Ohio State University. But first, Carnell Tate has made his decision about where he will play college football, and it will be at the Ohio State University. This is a player that if you have listened to any recruiting update that we have had with John Garcia Jr., Carnell Tate's name has probably come up. I know early on we talked about receivers that might commit to Ohio State. Carnell Tate's name was right there. In last week's show, recapping OT7, Carnell Tate's name was right there. And John actually also discussed with us when we might see an announcement from Carnell Tate about where he will verbally commit to play college football. That announcement was on Monday, June 20th at 1 p.m. Eastern time, which is exactly why Monday's show was delayed. I wanted to make sure I had some appointments I had to take care of. I also wanted to make sure that we discussed this news as quickly as we can. A 5-star receiver via the 247 Sports composite ranking, number 3 receiver in the country, number 7 player in the state of Florida at IMG Academy, Bradenton, Florida. He is 6'2", 185 pounds, and this young man is very versatile. His versatility is something that Brian Hartline really values on the recruiting trail. Ryan Day loves versatile receivers as well. He can play inside at slot. He can play outside at X or the Z. It does not matter. He can play either one. He can beat you over the top with a 6'2" frame. He can go up and get that thing. He can get you in the middle. He can get a little physical with you in his route and beat you there. He can get you in the short routes as well. Carnell Tate is one of those guys that every time you watch him play, you are leaving the game saying, I want that guy to play on my college football team, play on my favorite college football team. It came down to primarily what I have been seeing and what John Garcia Jr. actually reiterated, Tennessee or Ohio State. Those are the two schools. I have read your comments in the YouTube comment section. You guys know a lot of things that if they're true, okay. If they're not true, okay. But there are a lot of things that have been circulating about Tate, Tennessee, Tate, Ohio State, about which way will he go. This is huge for this recruiting class. This right here for Ohio State in the recruiting, knowing that they are still probably going to recruit and bring a quarterback into this class, the 2023 recruiting class specifically. This is huge because, as I mentioned last week, I want to say it once again, a player like Tate is not only going to be able to recruit other players, elite players, he's also going to be able to recruit and get a really good quarterback to come here. Even if he does not actively go out there and do it himself, there are going to be recruits. There are going to be guys that will want to play with Carnell Tate. And if I'm an elite elite quarterback that can get an offer from the Ohio State University, come on in. Now, some of you might say, Jay, why would Ohio State want to bring a quarterback in? Yeah, this is a receiver time, receiver week. We're going to talk a lot about receivers this week. Well, let's focus on the receivers. But there's two things you can look at here. Tate coming in and how it affects guys like Austin Novosad and Brock Glenn that have recently taken official visits to Ohio State. I do believe those quarterbacks are looking at this and saying, Ohio State's doing something special. They've had Justin Fields 2 years. They're going to get a second year out of C.J. Stroud. Ryan Day did phenomenal things with Dwayne Haskins in 2018. Maybe, just maybe, I want to be in Columbus, not just only because Ryan Day is there, but also because they got all the dudes at receiver that I want to throw the ball to. That's it. If I'm a quarterback, I want to go to a place that's not only going to recruit elite receivers, but also can develop me, but also is going to be able to develop the players, the receivers that I'm going to throw the ball to. Ohio State develops quarterbacks. Ohio State recruits elite receivers. Ohio State develops receivers as well. It's a win-win for everybody involved. I keep talking about the quarterbacks. I do think there will be a couple quarterbacks that will commit to, not a couple, at least one quarterback that will commit in the 2023 class. But if you look at the depth chart and the roster at Ohio State at quarterback, there's not the depth that you might think. I didn't see 5 or 6 or 7 quarterback names there. I believe last time I checked, there were 3. Now maybe the preferred walk-ons or the walk-ons might not be on there. Okay. But what's that going to be? 1? Maybe. Ohio State needs to add depth at quarterback. I understand why Ryan Day and Corey Dennis are determined to bring in a quarterback in every single class. And I do think this Carnell Tate decision, him committing to Ohio State, will impact and affect the thought process and the decision-making about where a quarterback will verbally commit to play college football very, very soon. I am glad Carnell Tate is here. But not only is he here, there will be other quarterbacks, or excuse me, other players, possibly receivers, that will commit to Ohio State very, very soon. Who are guys that might commit? Is it likely? We'll discuss that right here. Next. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all of the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoffs and Major League Baseball. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all your sports, scores, podcasts, and news this season. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. One live NBA draft show is not enough for Locked On. The entire NBA channel is going live on NBA draft tonight. So if you have a favorite NBA team, make sure you subscribe now to their Locked On YouTube channel so you get notified when they go live on NBA draft night. Carnell Tate, there will be an effect. It will be a trickle-down effect looking at what he did, his announcement, and how it impacts other people. Carnell Tate, a 5-star receiver. You may say, Jay, great. They got Bryson Rodgers, who did big things at OT7. They got Carnell Tate, who did big things at OT7. Do they need more receivers? Yeah. Can you ever have too many receivers? No. Well, who might end up committing to Ohio State? And what does the crystal ball say? Now, I want to use the crystal ball predictions via 247 Sports. There are national recruiting analysts that have made predictions. There are guys in different regions. Some guys cover different teams. And I'll go over each one, not so much names, but each one, so you know who they are, where they're from, and what the prediction is as far as where these two young men will go play college football. All eyes and all roads seem to lead for Brandon Ennis, and Noah Rogers to commit to Ohio State, but they haven't committed yet. I do think Ennis might be leaning towards Ohio State. Noah Rogers, we'll have to wait and see. Brandon Ennis, we talked about him previously, a 5-star receiver from American Heritage High School in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, another 2023 recruit. Brandon Ennis, currently via 247 Sports, their crystal ball prediction that looks like Ohio State has 71.4% of the predictions going to the Buckeyes. The other school in the running for the 6', 190-pound receiver is USC at 28.6% as far as where the predictions go. As far as the lead experts at 247 Sports, 2 of them predict that Ennis will go to Ohio State. Only one, Greg Biggins, the national recruiting analyst, predicts that he will go to USC. Biggins says out of a scale of 10, he's 7 out of 10 leaning towards Ennis going to USC. As far as the other two lead experts, give it a 5 out of 10 or medium, kind of waiting and guessing and making it a guessing game. The other experts that are on here, there are 5 of them. All 4 of the 5 predicted Ennis will go to Ohio State, while only 1 predicts that Ennis will go to USC. That's another high weight there for the number. 8 out of 10 for Ennis to go to USC from one expert. The other ones are all going with Ennis to the Buckeyes. Another one is Noah Rogers, a 4-star receiver via 247 Sports composite rankings, number 9 receiver in the country from Rolesville High School in Rolesville, North Carolina, 6'2", 180 pounds. Looks like every expert that has put in a prediction, it all says that Noah Rogers to Ohio State is where all the experts are leaning, and these are all 247 Sports employees. There are 2 lead experts that pick Ohio State to be where Noah Rogers will go, and then the other analysts and insiders, they are all picking Ohio State. They got a national recruiting analyst, a guy that covers Michigan State, a guy that covers Florida State, Bill Kurelic from Bucknuts, and then the Big Spur from South Carolina insider. They're all picking that Noah Rogers will go to Ohio State. I do think this is a huge effect and a huge impact, not because of Carnell Tate, but it will be impacted because of Carnell Tate. I do believe all of these crystal ball predictions that all these gentlemen have put in together, one guy had 8, I believe the other had a few less. All these crystal ball predictions were leaning towards Rogers and Ennis to go to Ohio State prior to Tate's decision. But as you know, Ohio State's trying to stockpile at this position. I believe there were 4 receivers in last year's recruiting class. I would not be shocked if there are 4 receivers in this year's recruiting class, simply because Brian Hartline realizes you might get a guy or 2 to transfer. Remember the name Mookie Cooper? Transferred from Ohio State? A guy that Brian Hartline recruited, a guy that people thought in year 3 or 4 would be a piece of the pie here in Columbus, ended up transferring. Now, he did go closer to home. I think he's back in Missouri. I think he's from St. Louis. So it all makes sense. But you also wanted to play. Ohio State's program is high. It's up here. If you're watching on YouTube, Missouri's kind of lower. Missouri's kind of mid-tier. Now, if you recruit down, if you transfer down, it makes sense. You might be able to get on the field. I do think Mookie Cooper made a wise decision to go to a school that will allow him to play sooner than he would play at Ohio State. But I do think Rogers and Ennis, this is something that people are going to be watching very, very closely. We're not able to get John Garcia Jr. on the show now. He's busy this week doing some things personally. I can't get him on the show until the end of the week. And so we're not able to get our weekly Wednesday update. So I'm curious about what John Garcia Jr. will have to say about these 2 gentlemen. I'm sure he's not surprised about Carnell Tate going to Ohio State. He may have had some inside knowledge that of course, he's a recruiting guy. He has contacts all over the country. He probably has some inside knowledge, and I'm just simply wondering, and I'm curious, Rogers, Ennis, does it make sense? No, to them. It makes sense to me. Does it make sense to them to go to Ohio State to compete at that receiver position, compete consistently every single day to not just get a spot and move up the depth chart, but to be a starter? Because one thing Jackson Smith-Njigba, Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka have done, they've competed every single day, moved up that depth chart. Marvin Harrison Jr. did phenomenal things in the Rose Bowl, and we can quickly see there are going to be some big things coming from that young man. And a lot of that is because he continues to work his butt off in the offseason and in practice. And so if you're ready to compete, if you're not afraid of competition, if you're somebody that is ready to step up to the challenge of being a Buckeye, if you're somebody that's ready to come in and say, Brian Hartline, I know what you're doing. I'm not going to be a cancer. I'm not going to try to interfere with what you're doing. Let's go ahead and make this thing, and let's make this machine keep going and going and going. Come on in. I think Ennis has the goods. I think Noah Rogers has the goods. Bryson Rogers is ready to go. Carnell Tate's ready to go. I do believe, guys, I firmly firmly believe we're going to be seeing a lot of good things from Ennis and Rogers, and I'm leaning because the insiders are leaning. The crystal ball is leaning to Rogers, Noah Rogers, that is, and Brendan Ennis being Ohio State Buckeye commits very, very soon. Brian Hartline, the guy who could be coaching these guys in the future, has done phenomenal things at recruiting receivers at Ohio State. How good has it been? We'll discuss that next. This is Locked on Buckeyes. Brian Hartline, former Ohio State Buckeye receiver, former NFL wide receiver, fourth round NFL draft pick, played for the Miami Dolphins and your Cleveland Browns. This young man, when he got hired in 2018 to be the full-time wide receivers coach, I was a little, I don't want to say hesitant. I didn't know what to expect. I had no idea how he would be able to translate and transfer the knowledge and the expertise at the position to the other players that he would be coaching. 2018 became the wide receivers coach, and then this offseason, he got the promotion to being passing game coordinator. Everybody knows Brian Hartline probably will be up out of town sometime. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be up out of town, but is Kevin Wilson going to continue to be the OC, or will that be a move that Brian Hartline will move up the ladder at Ohio State because he keeps doing phenomenal things, not just recruiting, but developing wide receiver talent? I never have any idea about how well somebody will do transferring their knowledge from what they did in a profession to someone else. Some of the best of the best of the best of the best can't coach at all. Magic Johnson, many people say the best point guard of all time, was a coach in the NBA for a hot minute. He had a cup of coffee at coaching. You might not have known that. It's not talked about very much because he wasn't that good of a coach. Isaiah Thomas was a basketball, the old school Detroit Pistons Isaiah Thomas. He was a basketball coach for a hot minute as well. He had a cup of coffee. People don't really talk about it. Oh, the two first ballot Hall of Famers. People don't really talk about it. Not much to talk about. One that we have realized, though, is that some of your better coaches, are guys that weren't too hot at that level in the sport. Steve Kerr, was he an all-star? No. He may have started a few games. I don't know his track record. I haven't checked his reference page to see if he ended up starting any games in the National Basketball Association. But he wasn't a 25-point-a-game scorer. He wasn't a guy that was shooting 50% from three, which is also absurd. But he wasn't someone that he was a lead to three-point shooter, but he was a bench player. I mean, he was a rotation piece on the bench, big for the Chicago Bulls, but he was not the guy anywhere he went. Steve Kerr, a phenomenal coach, just won another NBA championship. You can go up and down. Now, you may say, Jay, there are some anomalies. You think about Larry Bird. I'm a Pacers guy. Yeah, Larry Bird coached the Pacers for a hot minute, got him to the NBA Finals, got him to the Eastern Conference Finals in 98, 99, the semifinal round in the Eastern Conference playoffs. I mean, Larry Bird did some good things. The Pacers were good prior to Larry Bird being there, but Larry Bird just found ways to tap into that, the talent that the players had to be successful. Brian Hartline was not an amazing NFL receiver. He's not a future Hall of Fame wide receiver in the National Football League. He was not that, which is not a bad thing. But also, he may have learned along the way from some great receivers how to transfer. He may have picked up some things from them, how to transfer the knowledge that he has to the youngsters. And also, it helps when you have guys that are getting drafted in the NFL draft every single year, recruit guys, elite talent every year. But as we look back at what Brian Hartline has done recruiting wide receivers, you're going to hear some familiar names. This goes back 5 cycles. So back when he first came to Ohio State, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22, 19 to 23. cycle, 19, 20, 21. I don't know why I'm counting out loud, but you guys understand. 19 to 23, because we're still in this current cycle. And looking at what receivers, a few 5-stars, a few 4-stars that have committed while Brian Hartline has been recruiting them, you'll understand why Ennis and Rogers are considering going to Ohio State. 5-star receiver, Garrett Wilson. 5-star receiver, Julian Fleming. 5-star receiver, Jackson Smith and Jigba. 5-star receiver, Emeka Egbuka. 5-star receiver, Carnell Tate. That is 5-stars in the last 5 recruiting cycles that have committed under Brian Hartline's watch. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. Absurd. Things we don't think about happening. But like I mentioned earlier, sometimes those guys that aren't the elite of the elite of the elite at the top level, sometimes those are the best teachers of the basketball. Ty Lue, for another example, a well-respected, highly respected basketball coach, somebody that was not an amazing NBA player. He is not a future Hall of Famer, not a multi-time All-Star, but Ty Lue knows how to coach. Here are some 4-stars that came to Ohio State under Brian Hartline's watch. Jameson Williams. This got drafted number 12 overall in the NFL draft. I believe it's to the Detroit Lions. I want to say that. 4-star receiver, who probably will start this year. We'll talk more about this young man tomorrow. Marvin Harrison Jr., 4-star receiver, Jaden Ballard, 4-star receiver, Kyon Grays, and 4-star receiver, Caleb Burton. You see a trend? 5-stars and 4-stars all over the place, competing with each other to get on the field. Now, I probably should have said probably will get on the field this year, and Marvin Harrison Jr. to start. I do think he will be a projected starter as an outside receiver. We'll discuss who else I think will be starting at the outside receiver in another twist that I think we'll see with Julian Fleming coming up in the upcoming season. Brian Hartline, he has found a formula that works. He's adjusted said formula as the portal and NIL continue to be a piece of the pie that coaches in college sports have to deal with. And Brian Hartline, buddy, I need to know what you're doing. I need to know what you're on, because I want that as a part of my life. Yes, everyone keeps saying it might happen sometime down the road. Brian Hartline might not be at Ohio State forever. He might not be. Might not be. But as we have seen with Virginia Tech now, I'm not going to say names. Coach Beamer, former Virginia Tech head coach, he had a long time. When I say long time, I believe 20-year defensive coordinator. I believe his name was Bud Foster. Now, these names, I might be butchering Bud Foster's name, but I believe Bud Foster. Now, I know that's his name. Wrong school. But there was a defensive coordinator at Virginia Tech under Coach Beamer who was there for 20 years. Even after Beamer retired, he stayed being the DC. He said, hey, man, look, I've had chances to go other places. I've had chances to take head coaching jobs. This is what I want to do, and this is where I want to be. Wonder if that is in Brian Hartline's mind. If maybe, just maybe, him being in Columbus is amazing for him to be the receivers coach, and if he gets promoted to OC, that's what he wants to do, and maybe this is where he wants to be. We don't know right now if he's going to leave. There's speculation that he might because of some things he talked about during today's show. But if he does it, it would make a lot of sense to me. Did great things as an Ohio State player, doing great things as an Ohio State coach, and maybe him being the OC at Ohio State, it's just fine with him. Guys, today's show, man, it's been fun. Glad to be back behind the mic. We'll be back tomorrow previewing and looking at the Ohio State wide receiver position with a little spicy little conversation. Nothing crazy, nothing absolutely absurd, or maybe spicy to some conversation to lead off tomorrow's show. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. You can also send all of your emails to jstevens317 at gmail.com. Thank you for checking out and making Locked on Buckeyes your first listen of every single day. Now is the perfect time to discuss and look at what's to come on the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft. The first picks of the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft have been made. Search now for Ultimate NBA Mock Draft and get over 50 insiders, the Odyssey sports experts, the draft experts of Locked on NBA Big Board, the 5-episode Ultimate NBA Mock Draft is underway. Make Ultimate NBA Mock Draft your second listen today.